Wow, did I learn a lot from this short discussion with Kyle Brandon on leadership and on legacy. So I would pay attention and take notes. We're going to talk about how Kyle overcame fears to take a big leap. Is there anything in your life that you've been thinking about and you need the encouragement to take the leap? I think you're going to relate. We're going to talk about leadership lessons and how you balance growth versus impact, the importance of having clarity as a leader, building trust and community at work. Should we talk about our teams? Should we talk about their personal lives at work? We're going to have that discussion. And near the end, we're going to talk about a competitive advantage that Kyle and his business has over your business and over your team. And it may surprise you and it may even scare you. Check it out. Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. I'm Phil Mueller and I'm very excited for today's guest, Mr. Kyle Brandon. Kyle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Phil. Thank you for having me.
Well, I got to meet Kyle at a couple of our local business events. What a great guy. Kyle is the founder and managing partner at Second Flight Capital. We're going to talk a lot about that and some of the keys to success and what they're doing and why they're doing it. But he has a lot of background in business and in leadership, including a vice president in the corporate world, business development leader in an accounting firm. He was actually originally a missionary with Glen Mary Missions, which interestingly, my cousin, Jason Mullenkamp, is a brother for Glen Mary. So I'm familiar with their organization. We do some work with them a little bit. So we just figured this out, by the way, about 3 to 4 minutes ago. So it's interesting how we're truly connected to everybody in multiple different ways. But Kyle, thanks so much for coming on. I'm excited to get into this discussion. We always get on tangents before the episode about things like we need to be recording. Kyle, tell us a little bit about your backstory and kind of how you arrived at what you're doing today.
Yeah, so starting with the missionary group and having a theology degree is not the typical path to get into a capital markets type of environment.
But a path nonetheless, Kyle. But a path
nonetheless. Yeah, guided by the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, I think it really started, if I can skip a few steps, with seeing the need. Right, meeting business owners, one in particular that had such a deep, generous spirit and wanted to find a way to care for his employees long into the future while transitioning his business. And then I met another one and another one. And hearing that story over and over, I said, well, somebody should really do something about this, create a path for the generous and people-minded and community-minded business owner. And that's where it started.
And actually interesting, I forgot about this, Kyle, but we met probably, 6-9 months ago. And there's someone, this is where this is interesting. So we'll talk about business, how we treat our people. Faith's going to come into this, but also business acquisitions and transfer, like succession planning, things like that. It's a really difficult thing for business leaders to figure out. I had given your contact information to someone that was going through this process, trying to figure out, do I sell the business? Do I try to develop the leaders? Do I do an ESOP even with my employees? But selling a business is very, very emotional because of your employees. There's the financial piece of it, but it's really about, are my employees going to be taken care of? And I talk to different business owners that are considering these types of things. So as you started talking to these business owners and uncovering or just investigating and trying to figure out, put this business model together, what were some of the things you were finding from them that maybe some of our leaders that are listening, business owners that are listening might be struggling with now or need to be thinking about in the future?
I'll add one more to your list, Phil. It's a great list. The legacy component is often dismissed as emotional or non-serious. But when you've poured your life into work and maybe your name's on the door, but certainly your heart's in it, when you've worked with people for decades and you're creating something and you're proud of it, knowing that someone else cares about it is deeply important. It's maybe kind of like, saying yes to the person who asks if they could marry your daughter, right? It's very important to have someone who's going to love the thing the way that you have. So when you're transitioning, you're having discussions around finance and how people will be cared for. The people touches that, but the finance doesn't really touch that. And that's very important to folks. So my advice would be long, silent reflection for the business owner who's thinking about what really matters in terms of my legacy. Do I want to be proud when I see people in the grocery store about the way this transition went? Do I want to be able to be very generous with my church, my community? Or am I looking to move to Florida and that's less critical, right? It's not a right, wrong answer, but it's got to be well considered.
Well, and I think the reason it's so important, and private equity, I think has a bad name, because I think it's perceived as very, very cutthroat and really cutthroat to employees, probably vendors, probably customers as well. So there's this fear that we're going to sell to somebody that just doesn't care, or they're going to change. They're going to try to change like the values of our business. So if we talk about, first of all, if we talk about, like, you have a strong faith foundation, which comes into why you care about what you're doing so much. I guess before we get into how you look for businesses and what you see more, how did this shift? Like, tell the story from the missionary work to kind of, I'll say, different leadership roles in businesses to Second Flight Capital. Help me understand those big two transitions from those three phases.
So I mentioned a theology degree. I also had a counseling master's then, and went to work for missionary. I was traveling around the country, kind of recruiting and screening priests and brothers for missionary work for Glen Mary. And after 4 years, got married myself, had our first daughter. And I wanted to find something that was more local and provided better for my family. And so I had an interview. At the end of the interview process, the gentleman looked at me and said, well, you have all of the talents, but none of the skills that I'm looking for. I'll give you a shot. And he did. And boy, what a mentor Ray was to me for the next 4 years at Definity. At the end of that, I got an incredible offer from Clark Schaefer Hackett. Ray gave me the opportunity to understand business, particularly industrial business at the root, going into business after business every day, diagnosing. And at Clark Schaefer Hackett, I got to understand a little more about how business runs from a financial perspective, how a partnership works. Got to see M&A ESOPs for the first time. We had a couple of shining star examples of ESOPs done well here in Dayton that I got the opportunity to observe from afar. And that just stirred this fire into me that I was talking about before. And ultimately met the folks that really inspired it, who I love to mention by name because they're just incredible people. And that's Gail Cookin and Christy Fox at Dayton Phoenix Group. Gail made a couple of comments. Yeah, Gail made a couple of comments. I think he said at one point, Kyle, I've made my money. I don't care what happens from my perspective going forward, as long as I can be sure that my people will be well cared for. I'm just so moved. I was so moved by that. And I tell that story regularly because I want other people to be moved similarly.
That's amazing. So first of all, I think an important point to highlight there is you were doing this missionary work, you shifted, but you're also like surrounding yourself or paying attention to really strong leaders and probably learning from them as well. And I think if we go back to your earlier point about like the legacy that at Dayton Phoenix, like, it wasn't about the financial money anymore. It honestly, it probably hadn't been for that individual for a very long time. It was about, which I think when we can get to that point in our lives where we're leading for a bigger purpose than the financial returns are very likely to work out for themselves. So you started to observe this kind of, that had an impact. How did that evolve then into over time Second Flight?
So that conversation led to a series of conversations. I think over the next 2 years, I had maybe 200 conversations in the community about how could we establish a locally owned, equity, I was thinking fund at the time, that would buy and permanently hold the great businesses of our town so that they didn't get sold off to private equity. And again, not all private equity is bad. But you hear time and again, it gets sold off, it gets moved, jobs get cut, that sort of thing. And so that was the original idea, got put on the shelf for a long time until my now business partner, Bob Schwab, who was coaching me at the time poked me in the chest and said, why aren't you doing this? Let's go, man.
200 discussions. I mean, 200 conversations in the community. So like
concentrated within like a year at Clark Schaefer, God bless them. They gave me the window to explore this opportunity and whether this was a good fit for the community. It was a very different thing than what it ended up being, but they allowed it to birth.
And the 200, I was going to ask this, it sounds if 200 in a year for a week, pretty intentional, like going out, having these conversations with different business owners, business leaders. I assume that's who you were talking with. Other people, capital partners that could help pull this together. Maybe I was debating, is 200 over a long time, like procrastination, or no, persistence and like on a mission? And it sounds more like on a mission, like we're going to figure this out, leading to a poke in the chest too from Bob.
Yeah. So it was an intense start and then a long period of letting it sit on the shelf, which was my entrepreneurial fear.
Okay.
I had wonderful mentors, but it took someone like Bob coming along and saying, why not? Right. You know, I feared that I didn't have the talents. I didn't have the skills. The idea might not be right. You know, someone else could do it better. All the things that we tell ourselves that are nonsense if the Lord, in fact, is calling us to do something. Right. So I said, well, Bob, you know, will you help me? and we went on this journey, and thanks be to God, He's really blessed it. So it wasn't an easy road though, Phil. I do want to tell you, it took us 18 months from the point at which I quit my job. That's how clear the Lord's call was for me. I quit my job and we made our first acquisition 18 months later. So it was a period.
and I'm assuming, so I want to talk about fear. I've talked about this in the past, of course, because it's so real for so many people. It was very, very real for me as well. But we haven't talked about it in a while. So I want to, Bob helped you get over this fear, but like, what were the fears? Like specifically, what were you afraid of before you quit your job? And then probably during the 18 months of, no, what did I do? Because we haven't closed on anything yet. I'm sure that was maybe elevated. Like, all my fears were real. I shouldn't have done this. I'm sure that doubt crept in over the time. So what were those real, like, what were you afraid of?
The most potent fears for me, and still what I battle, right? But the Lord has really helped me grow there, were I'm not enough for this. And I would say that was, skill wise, relationship wise, talent, all the things, right? You hear those attacks on a regular basis. And the other one was, I found as I went along, I wouldn't have told you this at the beginning of the journey, but I had an inordinate amount of trust, counterintuitively, in my own ability to provide and my skills to make things happen for my family. And I didn't recognize enough that the Lord was what was making that happen. So the fear was, if I give up this security, what's going to happen?
You did have the trust you would figure that out, the security, just the financial means to live for the family, or you did have the trust, or no, that was a fear that you were terrified of, but you got over it?
So it was hard for me to quit the job because I thought that I was giving up what I knew I could do well for the thing that seemed potentially foolish.
Yeah.
I did have the fear, to answer your question.
So you have these kind of major two, like, I am not enough, I think is so common for everybody, myself included, like limiting beliefs. How did you get over that one? I mean, was that having conversations and figuring out, okay, I can do that. Like, I can do this too. Is it, man, these dots are connecting too well where there must be a bigger reason for this. So I just have to take the leap. Like, how do you get over that one? Because I think limiting beliefs, I am not enough. I'm not qualified. Why me, in a good way? I think that just holds a lot of people back to maybe mediocrity. I mean, maybe not their fullest potential because they're afraid or lack confidence in their abilities. So how did you get over that?
That's right. two major forces there. So the first one was, in fact, Bob. We did discussions around, he did a coaching curriculum called IPEC, which he loves and has been very helpful, about really looking at the evidence. What's the evidence here? So he helped me to see the evidence. He helped build that confidence in me through conversation, many conversations over a long period of time. And then the second one was in prayer, the Lord kept showing me examples of this is how I work. I choose potentially the unqualified or the weak or the young or the dumb or the mute, right? Moses couldn't speak. Go speak to Pharaoh. Jeremiah's too young. Gideon, don't bring your weapons into battle. Just bring this lamp here. This is nuts. That's not the guy.
Right.
But that's who God picks. And the reason that he showed me over time is because that's how he gets glory. That's how we know it's him. And I'm just grateful that I get to maybe shine that a little clearer with my weaknesses, right? I have strengths too. I'm not saying that, but he is we do a better job of showing his light.
So first of all, a student of scripture, and well said. And I'll also add, just look at the disciple, right? Matthew, Peter. I mean, there's some major fishermen, tax collector, unqualified to be speakers and go out and change the world, right? So Kyle Brandon is another disciple. So I love it, Kyle. And so I want to go back to first, just if you're in this spot where you're really thinking about something, you really think you can put your talents towards something, maybe it's talents, not skills yet, as Kyle said, but your talents and your skills towards something. And if you can combine that, in my opinion, to what you're passionate about, right? And then what the world needs, this is going to serve others, serve God. If you can combine those three things, to me, those are the three kind of circles of, okay, this is my professional purpose. This is what I should be doing. And I'm not saying that's just your whole purpose in life. No, that from a professional perspective, I think if you can find those three intersecting things, you can really start to have a big impact and feel very fulfilled. And I just want to say that the limiting beliefs, your biggest fears, as you fast forward then to the 18 months, but even now looking back, how many of those really, really scare? How did those things turn out, Kyle?
Yeah, I think it was really a journey for professional growth. So not only are the fears just vapors anyway, it's not real. But by leaning into that, that's the opportunity for virtue growth, professional growth, closer relationship with the Lord. I mean, imagine, over 18 months, I say to my wife, and we have 6 kids, how about I quit my job, go no income, and we go buy a business? How's that sound, dear? The trust and the communication. I have
a lot of questions for you right now. If I was your spouse,
I should get a Mount Rushmore statue for this. My goodness, the trust and, it improves your life, because if the Lord's calling you into something as difficult as it is, he's got blessing, right? The blessing is hiding. That's why that's why you're seeing the fear.
Well, and I think that, what I talk about and part of my story is overcoming these different fears, very similar. And I think so often we just focus and fixate on the worst things, the worst case scenarios. And then on the other side of it, you're looking at oftentimes, I think, the predictable result, the outcome that might happen will make enough money. But that other side, the upside, if you will, in my opinion, is very fixed often, where we can't see much past, a month or not very far ahead. It's just hard to connect the dots forward. And I imagine that as you started to have these 200 conversations over those 18 months, I think during that time period, but as you're having these conversations, dots are connecting, things are coming together. I can do this. And you even said it changed, it drastically, the plan you had wasn't the plan I don't think you ended up implementing at all, because it changed over time. So all these fears, and you ended up doing something different than what you had planned on in the first place. And again, the main point is, if you're thinking about something like this and you have these fears yourself, you can't connect the dots forward. It's probably not going to end up like you're predicting it or want it to, because it'll be so much better. You're going to grow in confidence. You're going to grow in your leadership skills. You're going to grow in your impact. And it's going to be way better than you anticipated. Even if you fail at what you think you're going to be doing, it's still going to be better because you'll be fulfilled. So I'll get off my tangent a little bit, Kyle, but tell me about—
You crushed that, Phil. That's it. That's exactly right.
Well, tell your part of that. So 200 conversations, this changed how you went to market, all these things. Like, bring us into it. Like, what are you doing now? Like, how did we get here the last, couple years?
Yeah. So when the second flight portion of the story really started, when it had morphed enough, it was very clearly about how do we serve the people and the communities and the legacies of the business owners who want to keep their business here, and do it in a way that doesn't smell or taste like private equity per se, but still has an exit, a transaction component, but is relationship focused, not transaction focused. So for us, we talk about our mission within the 3 businesses that we own are all within one group called Cortera, run by an incredible team that we have there. And that we talk about making people's lives better personally, professionally, and spiritually. And that's kind of the mission behind it. Of course, we want business excellence and we focus on it every day. And of course, we want to be the best in our industry, and we still have to compete, and all the things are true. But we use the lens of human beings in order to do it. And Second Flight was really started to use that lens, so that when we acquire businesses, certainly we offer them the freedom to operate as they will, but we're going to infuse faith into it. We're going to care for human beings, and we're going to ask our truly incredible group of mission partner investors to share that lens with us.
Kyle, I want to ask about you said this word a few different times, but the word community. You said our community. You said local community. I think maybe there's a business community. Can you define what you mean? Because you brought that up a couple different times.
Yeah. So we purchase businesses within a 200-mile radius of Dayton. So we would consider that community. Of course, it's far too large to be a single community. It's a collection of communities, right?
Yep.
But when we purchase a business within a community, we're also committing to that geography, keeping the business there. And we're not tying ourselves in such a way that, we're going to do foolish things into the future. But we legitimately mean, we want to volunteer in that community. We want, our employees are likely going to be living within that community, going to church there. And so we want to support the things that they support. And that's a part of our mission as well.
Kyle, you talked about kind of 3 pieces of building community with your employees. And I assume this ripples out beyond employees too, but personal, professional, and spiritual. And we have a process in our organization where we have our business rocks that we talk about every single week, but then we kind of touch on personal rocks as well. And those might be faith, family, health, other, different areas of life. But there's business owners out there, business leaders in corporations that are leading a team. And it's like, they might even be leading a team where they're in a company that you're not supposed to talk about faith or spirituality or personal things, because that's like, they're separate. So you guys are bringing it together. How is that? Like, can we combine these? Like, how does this work? Especially if we're going into an organization or buying an organization where maybe they haven't talked about spirituality in the past. They haven't talked about personal goals and personal things as much in the past, maybe in the hallways, but not certainly formally. How can we mix these things?
I guess I would see it as a little bit like a stew, right? You can take an ingredient out of the stew, but if you take the beef out of the stew, it's not the same stew, right? So we try to segregate our spiritual life. I mean, we are who we are as human beings, and we were created in a certain way. So if we try to deny a certain portion of us, it's going to leak out in other ways, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. And it's like taking the intellectual life out of work. If you ask somebody to show up and just continue the same motion over and over again, never engaging their brain, never engaging their heart, you're going to create a disengaged employee. It's not surprising. It's how we were made. And that's true. That's true with spiritual. If you take that component out, you see wounded and hurt people. And so it's really just about seeing the whole person, meeting folks where they're at. That doesn't mean you need to share our faith or do things the way we do them. but we want you to viewing the opportunity for you to be the best version of yourself, to acknowledge every part of how you were made.
And I think, by the way, if you talk about engagement and engagement with employees versus disengagement, there's different Gallup studies and other stuff. I don't have the statistics on me, other than there is a severe issue with employee disengagement in today's workplace in general. And I think, you can be afraid of talking about personal goals, spirituality at work. I think you're missing a great opportunity, in my opinion, from what I've seen. And I'll say that a couple of years ago, we weren't really doing this, and now we are. And I think it can be a major. I'll challenge business owners and business leaders to say, if you're not doing this, you're missing an opportunity. And Kyle is going to have a step up on you with his employees, and we are too, because you're not doing this. You're not talking about this at work. You're missing a great opportunity to really inspire some fire under your employee base. If it's just about how much money we're going to make, and that's it, and we're even money we're going to make, if you share that with employees, like that's good. Our mission is bigger than yours, and you have to think about, can you make your mission bigger? And then once you make it a little bit bigger, you say, okay, but why am I doing this? Can you make it another step bigger? And until you, in my opinion, if we're competing for the same exact employees and everything else is the same, the person with the bigger mission wins. So that's my challenge to business leaders and business owners is, if you're afraid of this, if you've been wondering or thinking about this, you're missing an opportunity. I don't want to say do it for that reason, like to engage, do it for the right reasons. But if you've wanted to do it, but you're afraid of the impact of it to your business, you shouldn't be. You should go after it. That's my opinion. I guess maybe what's been the result of it, because you've probably taken over businesses where how much you talk about these things has increased versus prior ownership. Is that true?
That is true. I'll tell you a story, because, Phil, I don't deserve much credit here. I'm a vision caster and a bringer together of great people. That's, if my wife might tell you, one of my best skills is I just hang out with great people. And so the credit goes to Tim Freeze, Luke Wade, Josh Duran, our executive team that's running Cortera. I want to tell you a story. Qualtronics, the first business we bought from wonderful Christian business owners who were loving and caring for their folks. But this is a blue collar industry, wire harness manufacturing. Very kind of early on the late on the supply chain, but early in terms of the blue collar phase of the work, very front line. And they had a 55% turnover when we took the business over. And this is a good business, Phil. Keep in mind.
Good business, tough business, right?
That's right.
Tough industry, tough business, but a good business. Good leaders, good people.
I want to brag on Tim and Luke, because in 12 months, they got us to 93% retention. And I believe it was through the depth of caring for employees that they just live as just part of who they are. So, you say, when you talk about creating competitive advantage through how you treat people and engaging the whole person, it does start with leadership. It sounds self-aware leadership with the right mindset, who cares about people and recognizes that people are not to be used. My friend Andreas Widmer says, and I think he might have taken this from John Paul II even, but business is for people. People aren't for business.
I love that. And 55% turnover, which means
yes.
my math, 45% retention to 93% in 12 months, doubled. In a tough industry, blue collar, there's going to be that's part of the industry. And this is from, those three pillars we talked about, kind of the core values you instilled, your leadership team and leadership. I want to come back to the leadership as a discussion too, just the styles and things like that. But think about the cost of turnover, the training of employees, the quality of the work that they're doing because they've been there longer. I'm sure there's caring for people as a ripple effect of the employees caring for each other. All these things that, we had someone a few weeks ago that came on and talked about 90-ish% of their time is focused on culture. So I want to just if you're fearing making these changes in your business, I guess this is your nudge to lean into it more, take the time, talk to other people that are doing it, call Kyle and check in with him, see how they did it. He'll sit down with you. If he sat down with 200 people, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's probably going to be willing to sit down with you too. I talked about your leaders. You talked about your leadership team a lot, cares for people, but tell me more about like your approach to the leadership team and their approach to the organizations that makes them, it makes the organizations as a whole so successful.
I'm a big fan, and I have a theology degree, so I love to use theologically nerdy words for things. But I'm a big fan of Catholic social teaching that talks about subsidiarity, solidarity, and human dignity. We already talked about the human dignity, recognizing every aspect. But, share the fruits. That's the solidarity. And subsidiarity is give people autonomy in their space. When someone's great at something and then you tell them how to do it, or let's say somebody's been working the line for 20 years, they know the ins and outs of how to do something. And then you walk up and say, we're going to change the process. We're going to do it this way without asking a question. I mean, my goodness, that's just nonsense, right? And so that's my approach is I've got folks who are so good, who have both the talent and the skill. And so my work really is to be a sounding board for strategy and to be a guidepost for culture, in making sure that we're living the mission that we've promised to is my number one concern. And our folks are doing a tremendous job of that. So it makes my life easy.
That's awesome. And I think give people autonomy and engage them. And you talked about a line worker, you're not saying don't change the process or work on improving the process. You didn't say that. It's not what your goal is, what the strategy is. What Kyle's talking about is how are you going to approach that? So, I referenced traction EOS, but you're engaging the leadership team in a strategy, then you're the sounding board, as you said. You're engaging the line worker and, hey, we want to just identify, you're doing a great job, but we want to identify opportunities where we can make this better. Maybe we can make you be more comfortable, right? There's ergonomics and all kinds of stuff around a line worker. What if we raise this, the line a little bit so you're more comfortable when you're working or it's not hard on your back. There's things that will benefit them, which makes them more engaged, but also there's productivity things and ideas. Oh, I've been talking about this idea for 10 years, but nobody would listen, right? So we're not saying don't improve, don't change processes. Caring about the employees and engaging them in the process, I think, is such an important part of leadership. So I love that, Kyle. So Tim Kite, who was a leadership coach, I had him on the podcast. I reference him a lot because he had a huge influence on me. But he talks about 3 elements of trust. I think we're talking about how do we just gain the trust of employees. He says, to build trust, character, connection with the employee, and competence, which means I can have an employee that I trust with finance, but they're not a very good salesperson. So I don't trust them to go do the sales job. I don't have the trust there, but character, competence. But you think, so that's kind of how I had learned it. But are you talking about are these the pillars of trust, or tell me more about how do you build trust in an organization?
Well, Phil, that's wonderful. And I'm considering that makes tremendous sense to me. I think the character is critical because people are smart and we see what's really behind things. If you start the conversation with, hey, could you go ahead and come in on Saturday? That kind of conversation, right, is very clearly not one based on trust. And then the competence, of course, on some level with the comments that I was making there, I'm assuming competence, right? You might have to train, you might have to coach, you might have to encourage competence. But, when someone's been doing something for a long time, there's some safety in that assumption. So yeah, I think you're right. I'm just reflecting for the first time here, but I like that conception of it. Communication.
But how do you, I don't want to guide it too much. When we talk about the concept of trust, building trust, because there is a stigma around private equity, right? And you're buying businesses, you're coming in and the leadership has changed. What are you going to do to the company I've worked at? How is this going to impact me? Why should I trust you? Why would I trust you? I'm not, trust also, I think, takes time. So what is your approach to building trust in an organization?
Starting with the seller of the business owner. We use the same language that private equity uses, right? So there has to be some proof. Now, we're lucky to be local, right? If you look at our list of mission partners and the folks that we work with, they're people that are known in the community because they do business in this community, right? If you look at once we've purchased the business and how do you build trust with people, I think our CEO of Cortera does a tremendous job of that. Tim will, what he says, over communicate. It's really about tell you what we're going to do the thing, and then tell you what we did, right? Making sure that people know their personal impact, because the fear that lives early in that scenario is, am I safe? Is my job safe? Is my family safe, right? If you're thinking more deeply on that level. And are they going to change everything that I do here? So you have to be honest, right? I mean, you don't necessarily, we're buying good businesses. We're not buying, turnaround businesses. So we're not coming in trying to wholesale change everything. But I won't say that we don't change things because, we're adding chaplaincy or doing a Bible study, or changes in some of the businesses. And then we've had a lot of process change through consultation with folks to find a better way to do it.
So, first of all, I think the connecting the change management is a whole different topic, right? Like that's a major fear of people. Like they've done what they're doing for a long time. They're comfortable with it. They're content. They're not agents of change, right? A lot of times humans want to resist that. So when you're coming in and buying it, managing that process and building trust. And I think what's important here is understanding yourself, how this is going to impact that employee, which goes back to your care comment earlier, and then communicating that you understand it and clarifying what the change may look like for them. Mm-hmm. Good or bad, they're not going to like all of it, but they're going to understand. I think just the lack of understanding of it, the lack of clarity of where it's going, I think is really important for them. And I want to talk about where this is going a little bit, Kyle. You talked about vision and that's one of the key elements of your role. Where is Second Flight Capital? 3 acquisitions, doing well. What does this look like long term?
So as you know, we're not looking to exit, right? Which makes us different. So we're structured very differently from an investment standpoint. In fact, I suspect, Phil, it would be a fun conversation someday that our structures are more similar than what we are to normal private equity, and being able to communicate that vision over 1 year, over 5 year, over 10 years. For me, it's about 2 things. We want to make a deep impact within a 200-mile radius of Dayton, Ohio, in terms of the number, the quality of businesses we own, and specifically the number of employees we employ. But also, we hope to have the impact of inspiring others to do similar things. And we hope to have the impact of helping business owners think differently about legacy when it's time to exit. I think this wave is happening without us, but we want to participate in the wave of let's think about what really happens when we sell to this or that or the other person. Because again, the language is all the same. It takes some piercing wisdom to see how it would be different depending on who you sell your business to.
Yeah. How do you, this is a maybe personal or selfish question because we're thinking about this, Kyle, in our business right now as we do planning for next year. So, we're in the business of buying real estate communities and we're trying to figure out all the different ways we can change those communities and have an impact and for those residents in different areas of life. And I want to be so compelled that we're changing that community and those people's lives so much where we have to grow. We have to go buy these communities because if we don't, who's going to go buy them? And what does that community look like in 3 years versus if we took that community over and we did what we know we can do. And we got to be smart about our growth, which is, there's this push and pull. I was just telling my operations manager this morning that we have this push and pull of, we need to grow because we need to have this impact. We also are trying to figure out all the ways we can have that impact. We don't have it all figured out. Like, we're clear. And that's part of what I have to do, is cast a better vision. But so my point of that is, like, we're deciding on these communities, or in your case, on these different businesses, and you're looking at them saying, this business has 150 employees that we can have a great impact on. But man, financially, this just doesn't make sense. Like, I want to have this impact, but like, we can't, it'll be irresponsible to go do this. How do you, I mean, I want Kyle Brandon to buy every business in a 200-mile radius of Dayton, Ohio, and run them all, because our world, it would be a great world if we had that happening. I don't know how fast we can do this, Kyle. By the way, if you want to participate, call Kyle, or if you're thinking about selling your business and you want it to be in good hands, call Kyle. We'll come back to that at the end on how you can get a hold of Kyle. But how do you decide on these businesses? Because you're like, our mission, I know we can have an impact, and gosh, this business needs it, but like, I don't think this is the best for our long-term strategy. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I would love every answer to be, well, just listen to God in prayer and he tells us what to do, right? But he has given us talents for a reason, and we have to engage our thinking, our wisdom, and our business experience and knowledge. And, we say no. We say no quite a bit. It could be cultural fit. That'd be a primary reason for us to say no. It could be financial fit. We know that our model is not a good model for buying a large turnaround company. It's just not a good model for that, because that won't be beneficial to our investors. Plus, it's such a strain on our talent, the talented leadership team that we have, that there becomes an opportunity cost question. Our best lane for blessing is the continuance of a quality business. And so we kind of thinking, how do we serve our mission? Not always bigger and better, but in a deeply focused way. Phil, I thought the way you put that was fantastic. We need to spend some more time together, right? Because we are solving very similar problems. Could we bless a lot of communities? We could. And so it becomes a question of highest and best use of our time and our resources. Yeah.
And I think ultimately, first of all, what stands out for me there is your clarity of your strategy. I mean, even 200-mile radius, like something like that. Like, you're very focused on what you're doing, and it has to meet certain criteria. It's a continuation of what's going well, not a complete turnaround. That doesn't mean Kyle's strategy doesn't need to be your strategy for your team or business. It's just that Kyle has a clear strategy, and you should have a clear strategy, right? And that's good input for me. So that's what stood out for me, is just that. And then the other part of it is, once you have that, trust in God for the rest. Like, it's going to work out. Things happen for a reason. You trust that. It's like, just, okay, this one's not going to work. That's okay. Like, we gotta focus our talents where we can have an impact and do what we're best at. So I liked how you said that, Kyle. This has been fantastic. I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate getting to know you over the last, several months. And I look forward to getting to know you more and more. We've done that today. And I'm just excited for what you guys are doing. I do want you to buy every business, so I'll tell you that. But then you gotta dial in your strategy.
You buy all the buildings. We'll do the business.
Yeah, we'll work together. Well, don't give me ideas, Kyle. That's a dangerous thing for different visionaries. But just keep doing it, man. This is absolutely fantastic. What I would tell our listeners is, like, for you, it doesn't need to be. Like, if you're not there yet, but like, you have this entrepreneurial bent, or you just think you have these talents and skills that you can really put to bigger use. Like, what is the best way to do that? If you're doing something that maybe that's not happening, Kyle didn't dislike what he was doing. He just made a major move, and like, took a huge leap, and had these limiting beliefs and had these fears, but he went after it. And what is it for you? I just encourage you to lean into that, take action on it. But also, as Kyle said, a lot of time in silence and prayer, really thinking about that as well. So Kyle, this has been great. One last question for you. If you step back and reflect, think about what you've done, what you're doing, how does what you do, how does it make you feel?
I'm exceedingly grateful for the relationships and the people that I get to interact with. Grateful.
I love that. I feel that, Kyle. So just tell me more about gratitude and being grateful. Tell me more.
We collectively, and me personally for sure, can become graspy about, I want to do this, I want to do that. 5 years ago, I wanted this, I have it now, but I want the next thing. And so important, Bob's a good encourager on this, to slow down in order to speed up. And for me, that means recognize what God has done, what the people around me have done, the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears, and the emotional energy that's gone into creating goodness, whatever that is. If it could be an increase in resources, it could be an increase in impact. And just be grateful that it happened, right? The plans are rarely linear. And when you get to something, it's important to celebrate. So the celebration in this case is just say, thank you, Lord. And thank you, everyone around, that we're able to have this impact and make this change.
Love that answer. I'm glad I asked that follow-up. Slow down to speed up. I think it's a good time right now. Probably the beginning of 2026 is my suspicion when this will come out. And did you slow down leading up to 2026? Are you slowing? Have you taken the time to really slow down? If whenever you're listening to this, slow down a little bit. Slow down so you can speed up. Get the clarity that you need, as Kyle got it, so you can speed up. So Kyle, I appreciate this conversation. We got to get together again soon. I'll say that much. I encourage you to, if this strikes a chord with you, if you're thinking about Kyle, part of Kyle's mission isn't just to buy businesses, but also help other people do this, have the same model so that these businesses aren't bought up by the wrong people. So if you're thinking about this, don't be afraid to reach out to Kyle. I should have asked his permission, but I didn't. So sorry, Kyle. But Kyle, how can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
They can find our websites, secondflightcapital.com and corteragroup.com to see the kind of live action of what we're doing. And reach out to me. I encourage what you said. I would certainly love to have discussion with folks. And Phil, this has been an absolute pleasure to talk with you.
This is a lot of fun, Kyle. I appreciate it. I encourage everyone slow down so that you can speed up. If you want to look for other tools or other ways to slow down and kind of reflect on how things are going, and encourage you to check out our website, thepurposematrix.com. We're adding our tool there. You can check that out, and it's a way to slow down. Think about what you're doing, get the clarity so you can speed up, and that applies to business, but other areas of life too. Kyle, I appreciate this so much. You're having an impact in your business. You've had an impact on our listeners today. Thanks so much. For the Purpose Matrix, signing off.